So you're saying that your approach is actually completely different.
Yeah.
And so that you guys will never reach an agreement. It's impossible. So, but how did you? When you went and you saw that it was talking about these 9 forces or steps that would occur, as the end of the calendar happened, how did you then begin to find these? I guess you call them wave movements and things. How did you begin to quantify these and make them understandable?
Well, I started out with the basic idea that these energies that the Mayan calendar described, that they are real. And so, but then of course the question is, how do I prove that? And when I started this work, which is basically in 1993, there were only a very few indications that there was a reality to this. Jose Argüelles had done some significant things. He pointed out that when the long count started about 5,000 years ago, it was the beginning of what we may call higher human civilization. But I took this further, and I believed that the Mayan metaphor for 13 different steps, which is part, for instance, of their sacred calendar, the count from 1 to 13, or it's part of the 13 baktuns of the long count.
Okay. Hang on, Carl. We're going to take a break. I want you to remember what you're talking about here. It's very important.
Yeah.
We'll get back to that. Okay, we'll get back to the 13 steps and Jose Argüelles and how he differs from him. This is very interesting because we're getting a very clear and different view of a monument that it's amazing how symbols can be read so differently and yet be the same. We'll be right back. I'm Jay Weidner, and you're listening to the Smoke and Mirrors Radio Hour. We'll be right back with Carl Calleman. And we're back. I'm Jay Weidner. You're listening to the Smoke and Mirrors Radio Hour. Every Monday through Friday. We've got a great week this week. We've got Jan Lambrecht is going to be here, Christine Page, Jonathan Goldman, Robert Lawler, and Carl Calleman tonight. And Carl, let's get back to what you were talking about. These,
yes.
You were talking about these 13. Well, go ahead, you say it because you've got it down. I don't want to break your stride here.
Well, everybody recognizes as part of the sacred Mayan calendar that there are a 13-day count going from 1 to 13. And if you ask Mayan elders, what does that mean? Well, they would typically use the metaphor that it reflects a process from a seed to mature fruit. Where you go through germination, leaf formation, budding, flowering, and mature fruit. Now, this is the daily count, and that's the only one that they have kept up down in Guatemala. But this applies also to the 13 baktuns in the long count, or any of the counts of 13 you might apply to these 9 different wave movements that are now going to be completing. Now, as I said, the little that I had to go by when I started was an observation that Jose Argüelles had made that the long count is initiated at the same time as the first higher human civilizations. In other words, the Egyptian and the Sumerian civilization. Now, what I did from that was that I expanded it and looked upon how, if you if you take the process from 1 to 13, how would these phenomena that emerged at that time, 5,000 years ago, how have they developed step by step under the influence of these energies to produce new results in human civilization? And to take two examples that I would be able to follow quite clearly, one is the development of money, going from the bartering system that had existed before this cycle began, all the way to paper money when you come to the 13th. So you could see that the very first ways of using money, it went into the paper money, like from a seed to a mature fruit. And I could follow the first scripts that were developed in the hieroglyphs and so forth until you came to the sort of the modern time with the massive distribution of printed materials. And you could follow step by step the development of the nation state. You could follow step by step how human thinking had become more and more abstract, going as that was reflected in the first use of numbers 5,000 years ago, until when you come to the 13th heaven, 1617, you have the scientific revolution, you have the calculus and all these kind of things. And when you look upon it this way, you can see that these different energies that the Mayan calendar charted, they brought in steps forward. It's sort of, they apparently had an influence in how human beings were thinking. And so they shifted consciousness and made people perceive the world in a new way. Now, from those initial observations, those initial progressions from seed to mature fruit, this could now go on a list of an enormous amount of phenomena that you can track this way from 1 to 13, and it all fits. It all generates a picture where these wave movements have been developing certain phenomena in human thinking and in human life exactly according to these processes from seed to mature fruit. So in this view, these new energies, they are like quantum shifts. It's not like a continuous astronomical cycle, but each one of them brings a quantum shift, a sudden change in the way human beings relate to their environment and perceive it. And that's why I think it's so important to emphasize that the calendar is not based on astronomical cycles, but on something else, an intelligence that is what Don Alejandro would refer to as the heart of the heaven, the cosmic world tree, the center of the universe. And now I think we're getting a clear picture of how this actually works.
Well, let's talk about, I want to get back to what you're saying. It's very interesting. But just for a second here, what do you mean when you say the world tree?
The world tree is, that is an interesting point, because we know from the Maya that the world tree played a significant role in their mythology, in their worldview, because they do point out that the way they talk about the beginning of this long count is that the first father erected the world tree. And now, of course, that's the tree of life from the Jewish tradition. It is from the Scandinavian tradition. This is Yggdrasil, the big ash from the Germanic.
Okay, well, you're on one of my favorite subjects here, and we got to take a break. So the next segment is a long one. I want to spend it talking about this world tree and how it relates to other various cultures. Like you were going, it's very interesting. It is a universal symbol from everywhere, seems to have it.
Yeah.
And I'm also very interested in the world tree. I'm Jay Weidner. We're talking to Carl Calleman. He is an author. You can go to his site at I'm trying to read here. Carl at Calleman.com. Calleman. This is Smoke and Mirrors. I'm Jay Weidner. We'll be right back.